Andrew Marchand is our scheduled guest from ESPN. We have Andrew with us.
Yes, sir.
He's with ESPN New York, covers the Yankees. I hope he's in beautiful Tampa. I love Tampa, especially this time of the year with spring training ready to roll, and pitchers and catchers have already reported. But writing a story about Alex Rodriguez, his involvement with the team right now, and then maybe some speculation that down the road, could Alex Rodriguez, A-Rod, ever be the next manager of this New York Yankee team? Bring on Andrew Marchand for a few minutes to talk about that, and Joe Girardi in the final year of his latest 4-year deal. This is year 10 for Girardi as the skipper of the Yankees. Andrew, Roger Weiland in Albany. Good morning.
Hey, Roger. How you doing?
I'm good, Andrew. I appreciate a few minutes, man. Thank you. You are in beautiful Tampa, I take it?
I am. Very sunny, blue skies. Very nice day here, about 80 degrees.
Oh, man.
Rubbing it in.
Well, at least we don't have another snowstorm scheduled this weekend. That's about the only good thing with the weather here. All right, let me just ask you, is there a chance that down the road you think A-Rod's got managerial skills and could be plucked as the next manager of the New York Yankees?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be, 2018. If you read the column, I said it's the long game. And I could see it happening one day, not necessarily in the near future, but A-Rod's only 41.
Did we just lose?
And he just gushes about the guy. And do I think A-Rod has the skills to do it? Yeah, I do. I think A-Rod could be pretty good as a manager. Most, great players aren't, doesn't necessarily translate. If you look at over, multiple sports, that the great players don't always become good managers or coaches, but I think A-Rod, when he is, where his brilliance is as a person is in baseball. You see it as an analyst on Fox, and just overall, he's very bright, and he loves the game. So that's why I can also see him maybe getting back. I understand he has enough money, and he's trying to make a TV career, but guys miss that camaraderie of the day-to-day, and they also miss the competitiveness. So, again, I think 30% chance, but I do think it's a chance. I don't think something like that's impossible. It's not something to laugh at.
Are you surprised they're not giving Joe Girardi, who I think has really done an excellent job as the skipper of the Yankees, are you a little surprised they're not giving him an extension now? They're waiting till the end of the season. What's up with Girardi and the final? Because he's kind of like a lame duck manager right now.
Yeah, that's what the Yankees always do, at least in recent history, going back to Joe Torre, where they kind of waited before doing extensions. And that's their kind of public front that they say about players and managers and coaches, though they sometimes go against that. So I do think they do it in large part so people like me don't ask questions constantly about it. So then they have, our policy is not to negotiate contracts. If you ask me if I think he'll be back next year, I do think he'll be back right now, but I don't think it's a definitive thing. I know most people kind of feel like it's like a definite no matter what happens this year. I don't think it's definite. I think they're gonna go one more winter where they're gonna try not to spend too much money. If they have a poor season this year, and you go into next year having to sell tickets, there's not an obvious choice that would sell tickets, except for maybe A-Rod, like we just said, even though I don't think he would do it at this point. So I think he'll be back, but I also think, a lot of times he doesn't look like he's having a great time. Now, the other day he said this is all he knows and indicated he wants to be back. But, a year from now, does that change? I'm not sure. It's hard to walk away from the Yankee manager job, especially when they pay you $4 million a year. But I also don't think that's impossible either. So I think it's open, but if I had to guess next year, if I were talking to you, we'd be talking about manager Joe Girardi of the Yankees. Still.
We're talking with Andrew Marchand, ESPN New York, covering the Yankees, and he's on a station that is the home for New York Yankee baseball here in the capital. Reason 104.5, the team, ESPN Radio. Andrew, what about this Yankee team? What do you expect this year? A young team. I know they got everything. They're looking forward to 2018 and make a serious run, but can this team compete and win what? Can they be competing with Boston and win the AL East? Are these young guys going to fire here in this season and be relevant for this team?
my prediction will be no, but I don't think it's ridiculous if someone, thinks that, it's possible. It's just, predictions are funny. People make a big deal about them, but they're very hard to make because, how do you know how Aaron Judge is going to turn out? How do you know if Luis Severino is going to take a step forward again after taking a step back last year? How do you know how Greg Bird's going to come back from his shoulder injury? But if you get positive answers from, those questions, then all of a sudden this Yankee team has a chance to do some pretty good stuff. So that's where I think you look at, this team and you look at their pitching, which is very fragile. If these young guys, they have a lot of young pitchers who are going to be, vying for the 4th and 5th spot. If a couple of those guys turn out to be pretty good, all of a sudden maybe they can contend. And we have seen that youth is kind of served now in Major League Baseball. I wouldn't predict it. More likely 4th place, but I don't think it's impossible.
Andrew Bryan sitting in with Raj. Now, if you in your article, you mentioned how good A-Rod is with young players, and we mentioned how many young players are with the Yankees right now. My concern is going to be if he does have an expanded role throughout the rest of the season with this team, could the media bombard it with being more about A-Rod than opposed to the product that's going to be on the field?
I mean, A-Rod would never do that. I mean, there's no history of that. I don't know where you're coming with that. I mean, A-Rod's never made anything about himself. I'm kidding.
Yeah, you're going there. Come on, man.
But the thing is, here's the thing. Yes, Hal Steinbrenner talked about an expanded role. That's not going to be this year. He said expanded role just in the future. I mean, A-Rod, look, it's going to be a story next week when he shows up, but they have a lot of guys in camp who are guest instructors. Goose Gossage is here right now. Ron Guidry. Usually Willie Randolph shows up. A bunch of other guys. Nick Swisher's going to be in. They don't really do that much. They sit in the lunchroom. They chat about old times. And A-Rod will be more active. He'll want to get his hands on all these young shortstops. So, perhaps you can get credit for it later. So to answer your question, when A-Rod's involved, yeah, it'll be about A-Rod. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And partly that's his fault, but partly it's our fault, fans and media, because he's a fascinating person to cover in a lot of bad ways and also some good ways. So that's so sometimes he's a victim of his own enormity in terms of fame and infamy. So to answer your question, he won't be around that much this year, but in the future, that's a possibility that it'll be all about A-Rod. But there might come a time where the Yankees need that. And again, the biggest thing why I think it's possible also when you talk about him is Hal Steinbrenner. You asked Hal Steinbrenner a question about Alex Rodriguez, and I mean he gushes. I mean he even says, "I can't think of anybody we could get to work with who would be better to work with our shortstop." And I think if you're a Yankee fan, you might say, "Well, isn't St. Petersburg 20 minutes away from the Yankees complex?" And I mean that shows you kind of where A-Rod's a baseball gym rat, and Jeter, although obviously was a super hard worker, he's not eating and drinking and watching every game. He was big on saying he never watches baseball when he's not at the ballpark. That was Jeter. A-Rod would watch every game, have the MLB package, etc. So, so you add up all those things and you can see it happening perhaps in the future.
Andrew Marchand, ESPN New York in Tampa covering the Yankees. We appreciate a few minutes here on Big Board Sports as we get deeper into spring training. I'm sure we'll get back in touch, but thanks for a few minutes.
You're welcome.
Thanks Andrew.